Every transistor architecture change since the 1980s is a response to the same underlying failure, not a manufacturing failure, not a materials failure, an electrostatic one. The gate was losing control of the channel, and the industry had to find engineering its way out of that problem, generation after generation. What you're looking at here is the qualitative version of the electrostatic integrity, a measure of how completely the gate dominates the channel potential, plotted against gate length. Bulk planar starts high near the top right of this curve, and as the gate length shrinks, the electrostatic integrity degrades, slowly at first and then faster. And somewhere around 45 to 32 nanometers, the bulk planar curve hits a floor it can't recover from. The root cause is geometry. When you have a short channel, the drain is physically close to the source, and the drain has its own electric field, a strong one because you're applying a volt or more to it. That drain field reaches all the way to the source end of the channel, lowers the energy barrier there, and allows current to flow even when the gate says the device should be off. That effect, drain-induced barrier lowering or DIBBLE, is not a defect. It is not a manufacturing problem. It is the geometry of a short channel and a nearby high voltage terminal. You can't tune it away without changing the geometry. And that's exactly what the industry did. Four times. Each time reaching for a new geometry that gave the gate more leverage over the channel than the previous one could provide. The four transitions on this chart, bulk planar, then SOI, then FinFET, and then gate all around, are four chapters of the same story. You need to understand what drove each one before the device physics of advanced transistors makes full sense. Now, the bulk planar MOSFET, the device that ran the semiconductor industry for 40 years, the gate sits on top of a flat silicon surface. The channel forms at that surface when you apply a gate voltage. The source and drain are doped regions on either side. It's elegant, it's manufacturable, and for a long time it's scaled beautifully. Dennett scaling, named after Robert Dennett at IBM, said that if you shrink all dimensions by a constant factor, the power density stays constant while the transistor gets faster. Every node, you got more speed and more density for the same power. That held remarkably well from the early 1970s to roughly 2005. The problem was hidden in the depletion region. Underneath the channel, the silicon is depleted of majority carriers. That's the depletion region. This region is shared between the gate and drain. The gate controls it from the top. The drain influences from the side. In a long channel device, the gate so completely dominates that the drain's influence at the source end is negligible. But shrink the gate length below roughly 5 times the depletion width depth, and the geometry changes. The drain is now close enough that its field lines reach all the way to the source junction. That's dibble. The threshold voltage drops. The off-state leakage climbs. The threshold slope degrades, meaning you need more gate voltage swing to turn the device on and off. These are not gradual degradations you can engineer around with better doping profiles or thinner oxides. You can delay them, but the fundamental cause, the depletion region being shared, doesn't go away until you change the 3D geometry of the device. Bulk planar didn't fail because we couldn't make thin enough oxides. Physical gate oxides reached 1 nanometer, maybe a little less, and Intel and others moved to high k dielectrics to go further. The real wall was electrostatic. The channel was simply too flat, too exposed, too shared with the drain to maintain gate control below about 40 to 50 nanometers of effective gate length. Now, the first geometric response to bulk's limitations was silicon on insulator. The idea is straightforward. If you put a layer of insulating oxide, a buried oxide, or a box. Underneath the thin silicon film where the channel lives, you cut off the leakage paths to the substrate entirely. No substrate beneath the channel means no substrate leakage. Problem solved. And it worked to a significant degree. SOI transistors showed reduced junction capacitance because the drain to substrate junction was replaced by an insulating interface. Switching speed improved, leakage dropped. SOI extended the planar architecture from roughly 90 nanometers down to 32 nanometers, buying almost 2 decades of headroom. But it introduced something nobody had fully anticipated in production: the floating body effect. Now, here's what happens. When a transistor in a switch in a circuit switches, particularly under high frequency operation, impact ionization generates electron hole pairs in the channel. In a bulk device, these holes flow out through the substrate contact. But in SOI, the body, the thin silicon film between the buried oxide and the gate oxide, has no direct discharge path, so those holes accumulate. The accumulated charge shifts the body potential, and the body potential directly affects the threshold voltage. So, after a sequence of switching events, the threshold voltage of your transistor is different from what it was at the start of that sequence. It depends on history, on what happened before. For circuit designers, that's a nightmare. Your timing analysis assumes a fixed threshold voltage. History dependent VT means your setup and hold margins can vary depending on the data pattern running through the logic. Fully depleted SOI helped significantly by making the silicon film so thin that there's no neutral body region to accumulate charge in. But the floating body problem was a real tax that required circuit disciplines that bulk hadn't demanded. SOI was the right answer for its time, but it was still a planar device. It still had one gate face on one side of the channel. The fundamental geometric limitation, single sided gate control, was still there. The FinFET was Intel's answer at 22 nanometers, and it was not an incremental improvement. It was a category change. Instead of a flat channel on a flat surface, the silicon is etched into a tall, thin film, a vertical ridge sticking up from the substrate. The gate wraps around 3 sides of that fin: the left face, the right face, and the top. 3 surfaces of gate oxide, 3 surfaces of gate metal, all controlling the same channel. Think about what that does to the electrostatic balance. In bulk planar, the gate had only one surface area and the drain had one surface area, and they were in direct competition. In a FinFET, the gate now has 3 times the contact surface area of what a planar device would have had for the same gate length. The drain is still at one end. The gate wraps all the way around. The electrostatic scaling length, the fundamental parameter that sets the minimum gate length for good control, dropped dramatically. The fin width, not the gate length, became the critical dimension for electrostatic integrity. And fins could be made narrow, 20 nanometers, 10 nanometers, without depending on how thin you could make the top gate oxide. Intel measured subthreshold slopes close to 60 millivolts per decade, ideal limit at 22 nanometers. That number hadn't been achievable in bulk planar at those dimensions. Dibble dropped to levels that bulk designers had stopped hoping for. FinFET ran from 22 nanometers through 5 nanometers across the industry. Samsung, TSMC, Global Foundries all adopted the tri-gate or multi-gate FinFET variants. 14 years of production. The fin geometry gave back the electrostatic control that the bulk had lost. But the fin itself eventually became the constraint. You can't make a fin arbitrarily tall and narrow. Patterning becomes unreliable. And you can't tune the fin width per transistor once the lithography is set. The fin pitch is fixed. High performance and low power transistors have to use the same fin geometry and differ only in the number of fins and threshold voltage tuning. That lack of flexibility was the limitation that gate all around was designed to solve. The gate all around or GAA takes the wrapping logic of the FinFET to its geometric conclusion. Instead of a fin that the gate wraps around three sides, you have horizontal nanosheets, each completely encircled by the gate metal. All four sides, no exposed silicon surface. Now, the four-sided gate gives you the maximum possible electrostatic control for a given geometry. There's no exposed surface that the drain can compete with. The electrostatic scaling length drops to approximately 1/4 of the nanosheet thickness. At a nanosheet thickness of 5 or 6 nanometers, that's an electrostatic scaling length around 1 to 2 nanometers, far below anything achievable with FinFET fins at practical aspect ratios. Samsung entered production at 3 nanometers with this architecture in 2022. TSMC followed with their N2 node. The nanosheet structure enables something FinFET couldn't: independent width tuning per transistor within the same process. Here's why that matters. In FinFET, the fin width is a lithographic dimension. It's the same for every transistor in the process. You can't vary it. You can put multiple fins in parallel, but each fin is identical. In GAA, the nanosheet width is set by deposition and an etch step, not a lithographic pattern. Different transistors on the same chip can have different nanosheet widths. Wide sheets for high performance transistors that need maximum drive current. Narrow sheets for low power transistors where leakage matters more than speed. Same process, same gate stack, different widths. That's a new degree of freedom that planar and FinFET devices never had. So let me pull the thread that connects all four of these architectures, because it's the same thread. There's a quantity called the electrostatic scaling length, usually written lambda. It sets the minimum gate length at which the gate can maintain adequate control over the channel potential. Lambda is proportional to the square root of the product of silicon film thickness, the gate oxide thickness, and the ratio of the dielectric constants. Make any one of them shorter or smaller, and the lambda gets shorter, and you can use a shorter gate. Bulk planar had one lever, thinner oxide. The lever ran until physical oxide thicknesses approached 1 nanometer and quantum tunneling leakage became intolerable. High K dielectrics helped, but they didn't change the fundamental geometry. SOI added a second layer, thinner silicon body. Removing the substrate beneath the channel thinned the effective silicon film that the lambda depended on. That bought another generation. FinFET added a geometric multiplier. Wrapping the gate around three sides of a narrow fin isn't equivalent to one gate on one surface. It's geometrically equivalent to a much thinner silicon body for the same physical dimensions. Lambda dropped by roughly half compared to a planar device at the same node. GAA pushed that multiplier to its theoretical maximum. Four sides wrapping makes lambda scale with nanosheet thickness divided by 4. The geometry is as favorable as physics allowed for a silicon channel. This is the whole story. Bulk to SOI to FinFET to GAA is not four separate inventions. It's one continuous optimization of lambda, using progressively more aggressive gate geometry to extract more electrostatic control from the same or better materials. When you get to the detailed physics of short channel effects, threshold voltage roll-off, and the electrostatic design of 3 nanometer transistors later in this arc, you'll have a map. This video is that map. The architecture isn't arbitrary. It's physics, followed honestly decade after decade.